There's no doubt the Republican Party is an evolving one, while holding true to foundational principles that define it. Joining me now is Charlie Kirk, the founder and president of Turning Point USA, host of The Charlie Kirk Show, and the author of the new book, The Magna Doctrine. Charlie, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of this the coronavirus response bill that we're seeing kind of making its way through Congress right now, but the administration's response in general. How would you grade the response so far?
It's been phenomenal. Look, the president of the United States was dealt an impossible hand here, one that the media downplayed. Look, the president shutting down our borders to China will have saved tens of thousands of lives, and the left came after him in such a horrific and unfair way. The president has been ahead of the curve here, and I'll tell you, no other president would be able to withstand what he's had to go through when it comes to this. This happened gradually, and then it happened suddenly. And he has put forth a very specific plan to be able to contain the spread of the virus. And now he's talking about getting people back to work, which is very, very important. Something that I think he recognizes the balance between the health risk and also the economic risk. And they are not mutually exclusive. They actually can be partly together. But look, the president has been phenomenal in this. He has rebuilt the American economy once, and he'll rebuild it even quicker the second time. And it's just incredible to see his capacity to be able to withstand criticism, trials, and to endure through it. And it seems he continually gets stronger and stronger no matter what they throw at him.
And they kind of build on something that you talk about in your book, The Magna Doctrine, which I mentioned during the introduction, is the idea that President Trump kind of approaches political things with a different posture than maybe some politicians in the past. For example, a lot of conservative politicians in the past have caved to a lot of the pressure when kind of approached with it, whereas President Trump seems to kind of stick true to a lot of foundational principles, but at the same time kind of addresses things in a different way than maybe a lot of politicians in the past. Has the Republican Party changed a little bit with President Trump?
Well, look, we're now a party that represents the working class of our country. And I love when the president is talking about, my focus is on the workers. My focus is on the workers. I thought one of the most moving moments that the mainstream media did not cover yesterday is when the president of the United States said, I'm really worried about depression. And the media said, well, what do you mean, economic depression? He said, no. I'm worried about people actually having depression because of a stalled economy. That showed empathy. That showed a connection to the working class that the Republican Party did not necessarily have previously. The book has been phenomenal. It is #1 in so many different categories, and the president has been nice enough to endorse it. And I think it's because the book articulates the doctrine behind the successful presidency. In the book, I talk about strong borders. I talk about challenging China. This crisis vindicates and validates the president of the United States with all of his correctly held, deeply held beliefs when it came towards American excellence and also rejecting the false promise of globalism. You see what's happening in Europe? It's a disaster. America is going to be back to work and more prosperous than any other country in the world. China lied and people died, and the president of the United States deserves such credit for getting us and weathering the crisis and getting us through this. This is going to go down as one of his finest moments of his presidency. He's going to get this country back working again, and he's going to get convincingly reelected.
And I think the American people are kind of on board with exactly what you're saying, too. We see in polls, for example, that he actually has support upticking during this time, not only when it comes to his response to the coronavirus outbreak, but also his approval rating right now. So I think the American people are very much so on board with what you're saying right now. And you talk about things such as things that are securing Americans during this time. We could talk about shutting down travel to China very early on. We could talk about the moves done at the southern border, the northern border as well, actually. Do these things kind of speak to maybe a more kind of transitional populist type movement taking place in the United States, where in the past people would have said that maybe open borders were a Koch brothers type of phenomenon, or maybe globalism is kind of the route to go? Do you kind of see that shifting back to a more populistic stance?
Oh, no doubt. I think it's for the better. Strong borders, stricter immigration, challenging China, making sure America is a prosperous country from the bottom up, a strong middle class. And I think this change is for the better. Let the Democrats represent Malibu and Manhattan, and President Trump will continue to build a conservative movement that cares about strong families and strong communities. This is a sea change, the likes of which that the movement has not seen. And kind of going to this Chinese coronavirus and how unexpected this was, the president's ability and his foresight to shut down the borders very quickly to China and he was mocked by it. He was ridiculed by the New York head of Department of Health, where she sent out a tweet, well, don't worry about coronavirus. This is not going to be a problem. The president was ahead of the curve here, and he's going to get this economy back roaring into full gear. There's going to be a lot of people that are displaced by this, but if you give a couple months, the president will have the agility, the wherewithal, and the awareness to get America back on track to exactly where he had it before. I mean, we've never seen anything like this where you just push a stop button and the American economy just goes into basically frozen mode. To get that going again is going to take a leader like President Trump. He did it once and he's going to do it again.
Yeah, you'd hope that if the government had the power to, first of all, tell people not to go to work, that they can play a role in at least getting people once again back out there. And we kind of see this with the stimulus package right now that is geared, as you were saying, towards working Americans right now. And to your point, too, at the time, Joe Biden was calling closing down the travel restrictions with China as xenophobic. So we've come a long way since then. But Charlie Kirk, you can find his new book, The Magna Doctrine, on stores basically everywhere. Charlie, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.